Hello and welcome to this tutorial on MySQL basics. In this tutorial we'll be covering how to create a table within PHP Myadmin, which I have opened here, and also the 4 basic types of MySQL queries, including insert, select, update, and delete. Basically all I've done so far is created a database, and it's empty, it has no tables in it. So we're going to be starting from here, and we're going to create our table, and then we'll insert some information, select it, update it, delete it, and we'll be good to go. So first things first, when you have your MySQL database selected, you'll see this screen come up, and it will tell you that there are no tables in the database and give you the choice to create a new table. It takes 2 fields, the first one being the name of the table and the second one being the number of fields. Obviously this is going to differ based on what you're using your tables for, the amount of information you need to store, the type of information you're storing, etc. But for the sake of this tutorial I'm just going to call it test table, so you enter the name here, and it's going to be 2 fields, so just enter 2 there. Now if you had to make a table for users, you could put users there and 8 fields there or whatever to fit your needs. So I'm going to just go and create that, and that will create, and then you see you have this screen come up afterwards. Now this screen will again differ based on how many fields you've selected, but it gives you a field, a type, length, default values, collation attributes, null, index, auto increment, and comments for each field that you select. I'll go over these one by one, but for instance if you had 3 there would be another row here, and then if you had 4 there'd be 4 spaces. So each of these boxes represents one of the fields that you can use. So I'll start entering the information as I go across. The first field that I want is going to just be an ID. Basically what this does is it acts as an identifier to uniquely separate all of the rows. The next is going to just be called string. Now the type dictates what type of information you're going to be storing. So for instance int is an integer, and then you could have a varchar or varchar, however you'd like to pronounce it, which is a variable character which essentially takes a string of text at varying lengths. And then there's text, which takes longer amounts of text, date, and then more specific pieces of each. But those would be the 4 main that you would ever use, mainly integer and varchar. So my ID is going to be an integer, and my string is going to be a varchar. The length says how long each field is allowed to be. So for instance if I set this to 11, then that would mean that I can have up to 11 digits in the ID. So I'll leave that at 11, and I'm going to put this at 25, which means that my string can be up to 25 characters long. This default allows you to set a value in case you do not actually specify one when you're inserting the row, or inserting a row into the field. So you can have it default to the current timestamp, you can have it default to null, or you can have it default to as defined, which then you would define something here. So say you wanted everything to start or default to 0, and then you can change that field to 1 if something happens, that sort of thing. However, we're not going to have a default for either, so we'll leave them both at none. The collation, I'm not even 100% positive. It has to do with the type of characters that you are inserting into it. However, unless you are specifically looking to insert special characters, for instance Lithuanian characters with and allowing them to store properly, you do not need to touch that. So we will not. Now, again, with the attributes, very rarely will you actually have to set these. That's when your tables become much more complex. By checking null, it allows your fields to be null. Otherwise, your field value cannot be null. Now, the index allows, or specifying an index in a table helps your table when it is performing queries, or helps MySQL when your table is performing queries on it. So there are 4 types of indexes: primary, unique, just index, and full text. The main 2 that you'd ever use would be primary and unique. The primary just specifies that it is the primary key and that it will be used to identify each row. A unique index allows you so that it is every ID will have a unique value. Generally speaking, your ID is a primary index. You only need 1 index per table, so we will leave string blank. This auto increment checkbox allows you to have the first time you insert be a 0 and then a 1 and then 2, and it will automatically do that. So it's as if you are defining a default value, only it will change every time. So we want our ID to do this so that the first row that we do has a 1 and then a 2 and 3 and so on. And comments allows you to comment on each of the fields, but again, we do not need that. So we'll just click save here, and that will create our table once MySQL does its thing. So now you can see that we have this table right here with lots of information. It just basically tells us everything that we just went over. And you can edit it from here. However, that is our table that we are going to use for this tutorial. Now, I'm going to go up to the SQL tab at the top here, and we're going to perform some queries. Now, like I said at the beginning, there are 4 basic types of queries. There's the insert, the select, the update, and the delete. They all follow a very similar syntax. However, they all slightly vary, and as you can tell, the function for each varies. So insert inserts new information into your table. Select selects information from your table. Update updates, and delete deletes, as you could have probably guessed. So we'll start with insert. In order to specify that you're using an insert query, you use the keyword insert to begin in capital letters. The next thing that you have to provide the query with is the table. So first you use the into keyword, again all in capital letters, so insert into, and then your table name. So currently we're working in test table, so our table name would be test underscore table. However, MySQL practice is best when you surround any column or table names with backticks. I'll zoom in on those so you can see that they are not right there, these things. They come on the shift of a tilde, or no, just the regular tilde key, which is this little squiggly thing. Generally speaking, it's up beside your 1 key on a full keyboard, sometimes beside your space bar if you have a smaller like laptop or netbook keyboard. But anyways, the reason that you do this is because MySQL has keywords such as into or for, that sort of thing, that if you have one of your field names or your table name set to that, it will break the query. It won't work because MySQL will think that your table called into is actually you're using this into table name, and so you'd have into, and then it'd give you a syntax error, and it's just not pretty. So the best practice, instead of having to look up all of these, what do they call them? Special words, magic words, something like that. Anyways, instead of having to look them all up, you can just escape it with backticks, and that stops the problem altogether. So, after you've provided the table name that you insert into, you want to provide it with the list of columns. that you're going to be inserting information into. Now, you actually don't need to do this. You can jump right into the next part of the query. However, here, I'll explain what I mean. So, after the list of columns, you provide it with the values keyword. And after the values, you're going to be inserting actual values. However, if you don't provide which columns you're inserting into, you have to provide a space for each column that you use, since we have or each field that you use. Since we have 2 fields, we would need 2 of these. And then every time that MySQL goes to insert a row, it will be having to process both of these columns. So it's less efficient than if you were to specify the actual field names. Since one of our field names is auto-incrementing, we will never actually be inserting a value into ID. So we never actually have to have ID. So we can specify here in brackets before you have values, so insert into table name, and then you open up your set of brackets here, and again in backticks the column name that you want. So our column name that we want is string. So we have insert into test table. We're inserting into the string field, and we're going to give it the values of whatever. Now when you're providing a value, if it's a string, which ours is, it needs to be within quotes. If it is an integer, it does not need quotes. However, if it's not an integer, you need to have quotes around it, and then the insert query is as simple as providing it with the string that you want. So I'll just insert this random however many digit string, and we'll scroll down and click go. So you can see that one row inserted row ID, and the query took 1/10 of a second, and it provides you with your MySQL query there. If we go to browse, you can see that now we have this one value with the string. So let's go back up into our SQL again, and we'll retype out what we just had. So insert into, and then we provide it with the table name. So test underscore table values of string, or into the field of string, and provide it with the values of, and again it's a string, so you need it in there. So again, we'll just provide it with a random thing. We'll say hello this time instead of an incomprehensible string. However, you can provide, or this would be quite tedious to populate a database having to go one row at a time. So you can actually provide a comma separated list of all the values you want to. So after you've done it like this, this first set of brackets has your first value in it for your first row, and then use a comma, open up another set, and just like the previous one. So in this one, we can type hey, and again we'll do another one, and we can type pickles, and then we'll just start doing some random strings. Again, just comma separating in between every time that you want to have a new row. And so I'll just do a couple more here. And this last one, I'll put in sloth scripts. And now if I hit go from here, error that corresponds to insert into, let's see, there's an error in my SQL. So oops, I typed select. The keyword has to be insert into, not select into. So then we'll click go again, and that should run through good, and you see that it has 7 rows inserted. Took that long to run, inserted up to the 8th. So if we go back to browse, you can see that we now have 8 rows with different string names. So that's the basics of the insert query. Next we'll work on select. So we'll go back to the SQL up here, and you can see that it basically gives you a select query to begin with. However, there's a couple problems with this. The select query, I'll read through the basics of it. since they're already typed out for us, you start with the select keyword, and then you give it the list of column names. This asterisk right here, the star thingy, is equivalent to saying all of the information, so every field that we have. However, the select asterisk, or select all if you'd prefer, is terribly inefficient. It takes a lot longer to run a query for anything, or a select query, when you are using the asterisk opposed to actually listing off your columns. This gets especially inefficient when you have a table with hundreds of thousands of rows. It can take noticeably longer using this asterisk. And that's often what's commonly taught among beginners, is to select all so that you have all the information. However, the more acceptable way to do it is to select, and then again, escaping them with backticks, the list of columns you want. So even if we wanted all of them, it would be more efficient to go select ID and string, again, comma separated list, backticks around all of the column or field names, than it would be to select asterisks. So I will leave it like this: select ID and string from test table. That's the same as insert. The new portion here is this where clause. Although it's not necessary, it is an optional clause. Where essentially allows you to give it the give it a parameter that it checks, and it only selects rows that meet that parameter. So for instance, you could say where ID is equal to 1. And this will select all of the ID and the string from test table where the ID is equal to 1. So if I run that query, I'll click go. You can see that we get this one row returned where the ID is equal to 1. And it gives us the string and the ID. If we go back, you can say ID is equal to 8, and we'll go again. And you can see we just get this one. So that's basically where the where query is. Obviously, this becomes helpful when you're, for instance, selecting all of a user's information from a table. Although, like I said, it's actually not necessary. Or you can have an ambiguous one, so I could say where 1 is equal to 1. And that will return all of the information in a table as well. So if I run that now, you can see I get all 8 rows returned. So I'll go back, and so where is optional. There's another optional commonly used part of a select query, and that would be limit. Basically, limit, again, the limit keyword, takes two parameters, one being optional and one being required. All this does is it limits the number of rows that the query actually returns. The first parameter that it takes is the row you want to start from. So say it returns 8 rows like our query would, and you only wanted to have the last 4. You'd say limit 4, because you want to start at the 4th one, and then a maximum of 4, which is the second parameter. So the first one is the row you want to start from, and the second one is how many rows you want to select in total. So I'll click go, and showing rows 5, 6, 7, and 8, because we've skipped the first 4 and select the next 4. If we go back and we go 0, 4, you can see that we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Like I said, the first parameter is optional. If you don't provide it, it is an assumed 0. What I mean by this is if you click limit 4 and I go, again, it just returns the first 4 rows in this table. So that's essentially all a select has to it. So now we'll go on to update. Now update, as the name suggests, can update values that are in a pre-existing row. So again, you give it the update keyword and then your table name. You don't have to have a from or an into. You just update table name. So ours is test table. Again, escaping it with that backticks. And then you give it the set keyword. Now, from here, what you have to do is set, and you give it a list of the columns that you want to set and what information you want to set it to. What I mean by this is set, for instance, string is equal to hello. OMG. So, and then if I wanted to change the ID, I could say ID is equal to 7. That's a 7. Those are the only two, so those are the only two we can provide in this comma separated list. But assuming you had more, you could then say like username is equal to Bob, etc. I'm only going to set the string though, and so that's what you do after you've provided the comma separated list of all of them and the values that they want to update to. So just string equal to whatever the value is. You can leave it at that, and that would just update every single row. Or again, like in the select query, you can have a where clause. So where ID is equal to 7. So we'll run this through, and you can see one row affected, and it's updated the 7th column to say hello Muga. And if I click browse, you can see if I scroll down, that's the value there. So we'll go back twice. Again, that's an optional portion of the query, but again, like the where or select rather, from the select query, it can have a limit. The limit, however, does not take 2 parameters. It just takes the one. It starts at the top and works its way down. It doesn't skip over any. So for instance, if I said limit 3 and we'll go up to 4, this will provide me with a syntax error, I believe. Yeah. But if I were to just say limit 4, go, you can see 4 rows affected, and if I click browse, the first 4 now have that value. So again, you can use where and limit in joining themselves or joining together, and that's basically the update query. Now the last one, can I go back to it? Yeah. The last query is delete. Again, the delete keyword. As this name would suggest, it deletes rows from the table. So you give it the delete, and then like in select, you have to provide it with from. Delete from table name. So ours is test table, once again in backticks, and then you have to provide this one with a where, so to tell it what to delete. So you can say delete from test table where ID, or let's do this where string is equal to, oh, how many O's did I have in that? Hello Muga? Was it that many? Maybe? We'll test. And so you provide it with a where. And so we can click go. Okay. 0 rows affected. No, that was not the string that I had. I wonder how many O's were in that. Go. Okay. How many O's were in this? I'll go find out. Oh, many more than I was typing. We'll copy this. No, we don't want to Google search that. We'll copy this. We'll go back, and we'll go back again, and we'll go back a third time. delete from test table where string is equal to that. Now if we click go, we can click OK, and you can see that we've had 5 rows deleted. If we go browse again, we only have 5, 6, and 8 left. Now I'm going to copy this string so that I can show the last portion of this delete query. Actually, I don't even need that. Again, like the other 2 queries, this can have a limit as well. So I'm going to just say limit 1. Also, like in the update, the limit does not take 2, it just deletes from the first until the number of limit has reached. So we'll delete from limit 2, click go, and we have 2 rows deleted, and you can see we're left with just our lonely 8th column. So those are basically the basic syntax and functionality of the 4 main queries from MySQL, and how to create one in PHP, how to create a table in PHP Myadmin. Basically what you need to remember is backticks on column and table names, using list of columns where you're allowed to rather than just assuming all of them, and using limit properly and your where properly, and that's about all. I'm sorry I kind of rushed through this one. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll gladly answer them for you, or you can send me a message on YouTube and I will get back to you there. Thanks for watching.